Well, World War III might officially be canceled if this is all Iran has. We have a 99.9% failure with Iran's attack against Israel. Last night we got 185 drones, 36 cruise missiles, and 110 surface-to-surface missiles, most of which originated from Iran itself, although there were some that were launched from Iraq and Yemen. We're now waiting for the retaliation from Israel, which hopefully isn't as disproportionate as the Gaza retaliation was after Hamas invaded and about 1,500 Israelis and Hamas individuals died. We ended up getting about a 30,000 Palestinian death afterwards, combined with additional Israeli soldier deaths. So we've got this standard of like a 20 to 30x response, and hopefully we don't get that kind of response to this, because this was an abject failure by Iran, and it was quite frankly an embarrassment. Remember, Iran sells these drones to Russia, which what's actually kind of interesting about that is this was probably the worst advertisement ever for Iran's drones, with 99.9% of all of the weapons that were launched against Israel intercepted, and every single drone shot down. Not a single Iranian drone made it into Israeli territory. Probably not the best way to pitch your drones. But anyway, Iran thinks this was a great success. In fact, they're calling this a success beyond imagination. The aerial attack is now done. Iran is claiming that they are finished. They are done with their attack. Out of the 30 cruise missiles that were launched, about 25 were shot down before getting into Israeli airspace. Of the 5 that did, they were then affected by GPS jamming, and only about 2 or 3 hit an airbase in Israel. You were looking at nominal damage to the open spaces of the Israeli airspace, or the airbase rather. That was the Navatim airbase, or Navatim airbase. And again, minor impact to open areas. The Israeli Ambulance Association reported no on-the-ground injuries at all. Now, Israel did suspect there was a chance that there would be no on-the-ground injuries, and they said they would still weigh whether to respond and how to respond, even if there were no injuries. And now we're hearing there were no injuries, so let's see what Israel pulls off. Of course, we'll talk about implications and that in just a moment, but some other details to consider. The U.S. is, of course, encouraging cooler heads to prevail at this point. We don't want an escalated conflict. We don't want a World War III. We want World War III canceled. Iran is threatening to attack U.S. air bases in the region if the U.S. aids Israel in any response. They're also threatening other countries in the area. Clearly, in my opinion, Iran lost a lot of clout here. I mean, my opinion is Iran just became a whole lot less scary. We know they're likely a nuclear power. They're not supposed to be enriching uranium, but we know they do deep in their tunnels. And so this is pretty embarrassing for them. But anyway, some people say that, oh, well, Iran intended for this just to be a messaging tool. Well, it's a pretty embarrassing messaging tool, because Iran made it very clear up front that they were not going to target any economic or population center. They were just targeting military installations at Israel. And Israel did move their equivalent of Air Force One into the space, and they started evacuating certain military bases because they were expecting those to be targets. Well, none of those really ended up getting affected, again, with the exception of an open space airbase, or the open spaces within one particular airbase. Multiple targets were struck in retaliation in Lebanon, specifically weapons depots from Hezbollah. Biden has considered this a win in a phone call with Benjamin N., suggesting that nothing of value appears to have been lost. That's not uncommon to hear a politician say, because we did just happen to light $1 billion of weapon defenses on fire defending against this sort of attack, which cost Iran a fraction of that. But that's pretty normal, because after all, an unguided rocket launched at Israel cost about $1,000 to send in, whereas the Iron Dome costs about $80,000 to fight back per missile, per unguided rocket that they're trying to take down. So a little disproportionate on the costs, especially when you're relying on the Arrow 2 or Arrow 3 systems to take down ballistic missiles that are potentially near the edge of space. There were some really neat video shots of some of these missiles. We're not sure if they're hypersonic, probably not, but near the edge of space that blew up and had some pretty neat explosions up there. Biden is convening the G7. Again, no reports of injuries. And now the question is, what happens going forward? That's the big question at this point. Previous to the Hamas attack in October, relations in the region had really started normalizing. It somewhat felt like the U.S. withdrawal would go from Afghanistan, and a lot of the Middle East would finally go without major sort of backlash and problems, although obviously we lost Afghanistan within a matter of days, but that wasn't much of a surprise. You leave a power vacuum, that's what's going to happen. But really what we're trying to build is normalized relations with, say, Saudi Arabia and partnerships with other countries here, so that way we can have better trade routes to India, we can have direct routes through land rather than always through sea. China's trying to do the same thing with the Silk Road expansions. So everybody's trying to do sort of a partnership land grab, I like to call it, in the Middle East. These sort of disasters and tensions just make all of that more complicated and challenging. And of course, the biggest consideration now is what's next? Obviously, at this point, we think markets are still going to be jittered, at least until we see how Israel is going to respond. You still got Bitcoin as your risk asset measure, sitting at 64.5. That obviously recovered from the 61.7 it fell down to. So nice recovery there, but certainly not back to where we were just before the attack. It's worth noting, just before the attack, we were sitting at right around 67, though in anticipation of the attack, we did drop from 70.7 down to about that 67.7 range. So we lost about 3,000 in anticipation, since obviously the CIA and the United States have been warning about this attack coming. Iran also gave 72-hour notice to neighboring countries that the attack was coming. So now the question really is, hey, maybe we need to find a true long-lasting solution for peace between Israel and the Palestinians, dealing with the issues of Gaza, the West Bank, and finding some form of solution, because frankly, these issues are likely to keep igniting. I kind of liken it to a house that's on fire, and you put out the fire everywhere except the master bedroom, and all of a sudden, what happens? Well, the fire just reignites, and you keep having a massive problem. So that's the concern, is we're leaving smoldering fires by leaving a lot of these issues unresolved until they explode into something substantially larger, which is exactly what we saw in October. And again, the biggest concern is, how is Israel going to respond? John Kirby was asked this morning on CBS's weekly show on Sunday morning. He was asked, hey, well, do you support Benjamin N? And his response was, well, he's the elected leader, and we're going to work with him. Some people think that Kirby was sort of looking a little fearful, but he kind of always looks a little fearful, so I don't know if he was really indicating anything. So, I think the big thing here is the United States has made it very clear, them combined with France and Germany and the Royal Air Force from Great Britain, we're all together supporting Israel. That likely means the U.S. taxpayers here helped prevent World War III, because, and then of course the British taxpayers as well. But it's mostly because we pretty much funded all of this defense against Iran. So it's almost like the U.S. is in this sort of proxy war against Iran, but that's not a surprise. We kind of always have been. The idea with Biden's negotiations over the last few years has been that, well, maybe we could finally have peace with Iran. Clearly, that's not the case, but something that is interesting that I was thinking of is those S-131 and S-136 drones that, especially the piston-propelled ones, which are just, they're flying at 120, 130 miles an hour. Think like a small Cessna almost. You probably had some pretty sick entertainment for the jet fighters. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of the Air Force folks out there. I could only imagine coming in behind these slow-moving drones. And the cool thing is, because they're not meant for air-to-air combat, you could probably use the F-35s, F-22s, and just use your probably, 35mm machine gun cannon or whatever to take down these drones with bullets rather than missiles, which is substantially cheaper. And it was probably really entertaining. I kind of hope we get some footage out of that, because I think it would look really cool. Like, actually POV footage. Wouldn't that be cool? Seeing some pictures, or video rather, from the jets shooting down little drones floating around. Yeah. So anyway, there you have it. If you like the content, I'll keep bringing out more updates. Jack, let's go this way. And I got to go on my own ride here, obviously. And stay safe out there, and make sure to subscribe for more updates. We'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.